I can't say enough of how this center influenced me and the benefits that my wife got from it. I thought nobody can take care of her like me, and I knew I had to do something for my family. It's in their hearts that they want to provide the care for the people that deserve it here.
Welcome to this edition of Lancaster Perspective. I'm Mike Miller. My special guest today, Tom Stoughton. Tom, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well.
Life treating you well?
It is.
Yeah. Just you're energized, ready to go. You just returned from a management seminar in Utah.
That's right. What it was? Yeah, it was Park City, Utah, at the Olympic Park, and that was pretty nice. It was like 40 degrees there, while you folks were having like 75 degrees days here. So
that's all right.
Yeah, but I'm energized and ready to leave.
Now I understand you are well versed in zip lines.
I am. I can tell you how to get from the top to the bottom of the 120-meter ski jump at 55 miles an hour. I can also tell you how to stop short of getting to your required spot in Cabo hanging over a canyon. So that wasn't so good.
We were talking about this off air. How do you stop on a zip line? I mean,
very well. It's basically you hit they have mechanisms built that actually slow you down. But in true, raw zip lining, you basically you have a hand that basically turns back and forth and it slows you down. And this one on the ski jump, because it was such a hard angle, I assume the cable got bigger or something happened as you got further down. It started to slow you down, but it was pretty scary.
Would you do it again?
I would.
Did you really?
Yeah, I did it twice. First time I had to do it just from bravado, of course.
Sure.
I couldn't be the only guy that was there didn't do it, and then you had a lot of women doing it, and they said, well, I can't not do it 2 times to show them, well, you did it once, I did it twice.
So I would assume we can take Sue and do this next time?
She would do it. I'll tell you a quick story. We watched her father down at the Kentucky Motor Speedway do the Richard Petty drive-along. So he was able to drive a race car, which is what he wanted to do. Well, I did kind of stumble on the fact they had the ride-along program. So you could actually get in a car with, back then it was the Busch Series drivers, and take off from pit road 3 cars at a time with the Hans device on in a racing suit and do 3 laps at 185 miles along the backstretch. So
against the wall.
You could almost touch the wall. So I said, hey, honey, come on, I need you to sign this. Well, what did I said, just sign it. So she signed it, and I walk her over, and we go into the kind of pit road there, and they put a suit on her and shove her in a car, put a Hans device on her. Said, are we going to follow my dad around? I said, no, you're riding with a Busch driver. And so she was in car 1, I was in car 2, and there was a car 3 behind us. And they ride just like you're that far from the car in front of you. You could feel like you could touch the wall on the back straightaway. And we came out of pit road into the back straightaway at 185, and you're wondering when you're coming into turn 3 why the car just doesn't start, spinning wildly out of control, and it just stayed right where that good driver put it. So. Yeah, she would do it. Well, it was a long way to get into the fact would I make her do it. Sure, she would do it. She's way more adventurous than I am.
Yeah. She's smarter than you are, too.
Well, goes without saying.
Tom represents the 4th Ward on Lancaster City Council. He's also the finance chairman. A couple big things happening in the City Council. One, obviously, was the street levy.
That was huge.
That was passed. Talk a little bit about that.
Oh, that was enormous. It's interesting. I mean, it passed by 45 votes. We had 3,200 voters. It was
now I have to ask, 3,200.
Not very many.
Yeah.
That's like 12% of the voting public.
Why do you think people didn't vote?
In some cases, they were kind of ambivalent to the whole thing. They didn't care whether it passed or didn't pass. The folks that really came out on that day were the people that really wanted it to pass, or the ones that really didn't want it to pass. So this has been a long time coming. The problem, if people say, well, what'd you do with the money you were supposed to spend on streets? Well, that money over time has been taken away from the state, and they came to us in forms of local government funds, state gasoline tax funds, other road program funds that have been pared away time and time again through each one of the General Assembly's biannual budget, to the point where there was no money to do it, and there was no money in the last 10 years to do it. And we've this was our 5th rodeo, I think, with putting it on the ballot. And we have to teach folks, especially after the first Kasich budget came in and took about half of our local government funds. And of course, this isn't new to you. You saw what he did to the state budget in your area as well. But we have to remind the voters that we need to become self-sufficient as a city, and not count on the state government or the federal government to swoop in here and give us money when we need to do things. So we need to invest in our infrastructure. That being the roads, we need to pay for it ourselves. And we had a big debate whether that was a property tax or an income tax. So it depends on what side of the fence that you are there. But I felt that there was a nexus between property and streets. I didn't think there was a nexus between streets and income. So we had quite a debate, to the point where we had a 6-3 vote to put the property tax on the ballot. So it was a tough road to hoe to get there.
Sure.
And then even when you get to that point, and then Ken Culver had a citizens committee that really carried the water. It was Rosemary Hagos, Bruce McAtee, and who am I forgetting? Oh, Bob Lovell. And then Bob Slagle was the treasurer, and was the last time as well. But those folks really carried the water to target the right voting audience, to get the message out, and obviously did a successful job.
Now, implementation of all this will start immediately in the next 6 months. As far as starting the paving projects and all that, is the schedule made up, I guess?
Well, the schedule per se is made up. Out on the city website is kind of like the 10-year plan. It really goes into 5-year detail on what roads really are in the worst shape and need to go first. So that's pretty well drawn out for 5 years. The bigger thing that we have to do is, for example, you're going to see a paving project, Route 22, from, it's actually county line to county line, but you're going to see it from the city corp limit in the west to the city corporation limit to the east, which is Main Street to us. We basically want to do projects like that where we only have to pay 20% of the project, not 100% of the project.
That's a good question, the percentage breakdown. You might want to explain that just a little bit, because some people think we're paying all of it.
Well, right, and that's that's probably, I'm going to say, a $4.5 million project. But because it's a state route and the state is doing it, they are paying 80% of the tab through the state, through the state's budget. We're required to provide a 20% match. So anytime we can spend $1 to get $4 using that new paving money or old paving money, we're always going to do that. Now, many of the streets don't qualify for those types of programs. For example, I live on Wheeling Road. It's in terrible shape. That doesn't qualify for any project that would get a 4-to-1 match. But anytime we can get a 4-to-1 match, we're certainly going to leverage that along the way as well.
Absolutely. And priorities, I know Tony Shamlin is working on that, or maybe the council. Who decides what streets get done?
Well, we have relationships with a couple different companies that would come in and will rate our streets for us. So it was most recently done, I think, in, I want to say 2010, maybe 2011. So there is a rating of, I think the poorest streets are rated either a 6 or a 0. Actually, if you're a 1, it's terrible. If you're a 0, you're a brick road. And we actually have, if you know, down on South High Street, there's a couple roads that are rated 0 because they're brick, and then we have a bunch of 1s that are in really, really poor shape that go next. And so that's already defined, and then what we have to do is maximize the money that we are going to collect on top of anything we can couple with any grant or any ODOT funding to get the maximum benefit.
Is it a fair statement to say that all the streets will get done, or just the high priority ones that are rated by these companies?
I would say it's a fair. Over 10 years, I think that anything that is that is in terrible shape. Anything that's I don't think we're going to pave over the bricks. I wouldn't do that. But I think it's a 1, 2, 3, or 4 will likely get repaved. The ones that are 5s and 6s are those ones that we've invested in the last 2 or 3 years, and most of those have been in alignment with one of those grants. So our spend on those streets will be for the crack sealing and basically just maintaining them, so they don't get into a position of disrepair, and they'll last longer. So, but I would say anything that hasn't been touched in hasn't been repaved in the distant future is going to see a new asphalt.
And I'm sure, downtown is going to be involved in that, which leads us into the Midhoff building, which is another topic that I know is near and dear to your heart.
Well, no, it's the Midhoff. We basically we purchased that building from a New York firm that had control of that building in 2008, under the promise that a local developer would buy the property, rehab it using historical grants, 100 different ways to Sunday, but was going to restore the Midhoff to whatever shape it was. Well, that didn't come through. In 2008, as you know, was the kind of the start of the budget crisis. But now we have an opportunity to get a grant to knock that building down. And if you can only imagine, you have the preservationists that say we don't want to knock it down. We have the administration that has an opportunity to take the grant, knock it down, and turn it into a parking lot until such time we can sell it and make our money back.
So when we purchased the Midhoff building, and now we're going to get our money back, you talk a little bit about the different fractions of group that want to do different things with it. How frustrating is that? I mean, being not only a council member, but you've lived here your whole life.
Well, it's not frustrating. It's interesting. In 2008, of course, we thought we had a plan. That fell through, and of course, then sitting on council, we were vilified. Why did you do that? Why did you spend taxpayer money? And I understand that. I mean, it's a level of accountability. But now we're to the point where we've had any number of buyers through that building that says, you know what, I don't think we can rehab this building. It's probably better that it's knocked down and then redeveloped. Now you have the preservationists that come in and they say, no, that you can't knock that building down. It's all part of your heritage, and I don't disagree with that either. The question is, where does that?
It's the age-old question.
Yeah. Where do the two meet? So, my suggestion has been with the administration. Let's make sure that we're involved with the SID and the DDL, that being Destination Downtown, and then the Citizens for Downtown Lancaster, which is a political action committee, as well as a group focused on downtown redevelopment. And let's get those folks at the table and find some structural engineer that will make an assessment that they can all live with. And then let's move on from there. But we have an opportunity to accept a grant that will knock that down and not cost the city any money. That's
hard to walk away from.
That's hard to walk away from. And do I want to knock down a building that is, as Dr. Ivan called it, has good bones? Well, I think of all the buildings downtown, there's only one that I would say doesn't have good bones, and I would say it's probably the Midhoff. But I'm willing to let them bring in an independent structural engineer and say, hey, is this viable or isn't it? If it's not, I think then we should move forward with redeveloping downtown, because you've got the Columbian coming up. We're going to redevelop the Columbian building for the courts. I mean, that's going to be a catalyst to downtown development. If you have a lot there that's currently serving as a parking lot but is available for purchase, I think the city can also be made whole on its money that we invested in the property back in 2008.
When you get all these ideas together, you talk to all these people, do you get a lot of people that not necessarily would have thought, why are you interested in this? I mean, all of a sudden it's, we've had to, because we talked about Midhoff back when I was on council back in the early 90s. And, does that bring out, people just saying, well, wait a minute, I'd like to voice my opinion about that?
Well, it's interesting. It seems to be that you have a lot of folks that, I understand the folks that are in the downtown proper, but it's the ones that aren't really in the downtown proper that kind of puzzles me a little bit. But hey, I'm okay that if someone's passionate about the history of Lancaster, you could have a fair amount of bandwagon jumping, but you have some preservationists that really say, you know what, we don't want to do this. We have an opportunity to kind of redevelopment downtown. And we saw that with Dr. Ivan, who made a presentation to us, I think, in April. And then we heard feedback from the Ohio State students that kind of did a study on our downtown and its opportunity. But they also pointed out things that, the Midhoff isn't in the best of shape. We also have issues with State Route 22 running right down the middle of it, and how do we mitigate that as well. So it's not just as easy of wondering whether or not we knock down a building. The question is how do we attack all the things we need to attack to basically revitalize that downtown and make it a destination that people travel to. When I was a kid around here, downtown was a destination.
Oh, sure.
You had the theater down there. You had Kresge's down there. You wanted to get the lunch counter. You wanted to get the batting helmet Sunday. I mean, who didn't want one of those? And you bought your 45 RPM records that none of these kids have any idea that are filming us today have any idea what they are, and the little plastic insert that you had to put in to make it work. So I understand people's passion for the city and the downtown.
Well, we talk about old stuff, and I bring this up only because you were talking about when you were growing up, but was at a gathering and someone said, you know what I really miss? Angle parking. In downtown Lancaster. Why? I mean, I just that. Do you remember angle parking downtown?
I don't remember angle parking downtown. You must be older than I am, or you must be
just a few years.
You must be more mature than I am.
But it was you literally parked at an angle. And you had to back out on 22, and then when it went away, I thought, oh, this is nice.
Well, yeah, and if you parked parked facing the uphill, you backed in, so your back tires were against the parking block. Yeah.
So
I've seen pictures of the angle.
You weren't there, right?
I wasn't there for that.
So where does the Mid-Up building stand as far as, is it on the front burner? Is it on the front burner? And you're looking at me like
it's on a hot burner.
It's on a hot burner.
It's on a hot one. I can tell you that. It's actually, I think there's a piece of legislation that I'll be introducing on, or at least my committee will be introducing on Monday night, and that is to accept the grant. That's part of the process. The mayor kind of stepped back from kind of autonomously doing that on his own and basically wanted to get council input. And so council will run that through to determine whether or not we want to accept the grant, which doesn't say that we are going to knock the building down. I think the grant just says, hey, we're going to authorize the grant. The rule of the grant says by the end of the year we need to have executed all phases of the grant, which is knock the building down and remediate the property. But in between now and whenever we get to the final reading of this piece, hopefully we've had good dialogue with all the interested parties. Hopefully we have agreed upon a structural engineer. Hopefully we've agreed upon a process and find out if what the next true step is. The question is it a viable building or isn't it? If it is, hey, play on. If it's not, and then we can't stand in the way of development. And it's a hard thing to do. I understand that.
Who owns the Mid-Up building right now?
The City of Lancaster.
City of Lancaster owns it completely. Doesn't have any
free. Well, we paying debt on it.
Sure.
But we do own it.
It'll be interesting to watch. And then the next couple of weeks will be very interesting.
Well, I think you'll have a fair amount of input during voters and taxpayers at least the next 2 or 3 meetings.
And that leads us to our next subject. We just election primary just went through, and pretty low turnout, I guess, would be an understatement. But I know you've been in politics a long time now. Does it surprise you that even with the street levy that it was still a low turnout?
I was shocked. With the street levy on the ballot, I was shocked at how low the turnout. And I think in the city proper it was about 12%. I think in the county it was less than 11%. So that kind of screams of voter apathy. I can remember my parents never missed an election. And that's one of the things as an American was your right to go to the poll and cast your lot. And if at least if you voted, you had the right to complain, so to speak. But I'm a little surprised at the turnout now.
And there's some races that coming up in the fall that are going to be for those who are into politics. We have some good races.
We do. You have in the first ward, you have a newcomer, Chuck Carruthers, and he's going to run on the Republican ticket against Melody Bobbitt, who's the incumbent in the first ward. And then the second ward, that's been decided. I think Mike Fracassa will be appointed there after the primary. And then the third ward, Randy Groff will move on. He doesn't have any opposition. I don't have any opposition in 4, but in the fifth ward, assuming Harry Hiles' 4-vote victory stands up against Tim Welker, Harry will take on Ken Mogul. So you'll have a race there, and then for the first time in
long time,
in the sixth ward, Rudy Tull will run against I think Becky Teener. So Rudy will have a race to run, and then of course you have the council at large positions where we have a full slate Bob Hedges, John Hale, they're seasoned. Bob's very seasoned, and John's been there, a term and a half. And then you have Gina Bentel, ironically, the newcomer, was the highest vote getter in the primary. And then she'll run against no political newcomer in Jerry Woodard. He's been through quite a few elections. And then a newcomer, a guy named Carlin Nixon, who I think is distantly related to the old James Lance, who was the Speaker of the House as a Democrat way back in the 60s, I'm thinking.
Right. Do you like to campaign?
Do I like to campaign? I do. It would be more fun to have a contested race than not. It's easier not to have one.
Oh, absolutely.
But knocking on a door and talking to residents, you really hear what it is they want to talk about. Sometimes there isn't any words out of your mouth that they want to hear. They just want a chance to vent. Yeah, sure. There are sometimes that you hear those encouraging words that you're doing what we'd like you to do. Not so much the campaigning side of it, but as you know enough, you got enough constituent calls along the way that, for every 10 you got, 9 of them ended pretty well. Sure. Whether you could help the resident or not. But there was always that one call out of every 10 that was just, hey, I'm going to lay you out. And, I've got some concerns, and that's part of the process. It's a good thing. That's why our numbers are published. That's why our email addresses are out there. And oh, by the way, if you haven't had enough, come down and talk to us during Voters and Taxpayers and give us a business. But I will tell you, it's the campaigning is good. The interaction with folks is good. It's that's the part that is kind of enriching. So to me, anyway.
There was don't want to forget the one president of the city council race.
Oh my goodness, I did.
That's going to be a good race.
Kathy Bittler and Greg Russell. I mean, two good candidates, and that'll be about getting out the vote, I think.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely.
So they're both pretty well known. They're both great people. So
that's I was hoping maybe with all the races that we'll get more voters out. I was very disappointed with the amount of voters that came out, but again, that's what they have the right not to if they don't want to.
I don't understand it.
I don't. A lot of people gave their lives for people to vote, so I just. I
think 45 days prior to the election, you could go to the Board of Elections Monday through Friday if you wanted to and voted, or you could have said I was out of town and got an absentee ballot. They'll mail you one. All you have to do is put the postage on it. But it's one of the things. I mean, with my children, both my kids are of voting age, and I insist. I don't tell them who to vote for.
Right. Sure.
I might suggest, but I think it's important that they see how important that is. So.
Absolutely. So I know we just got a few minutes left. I know you're a big sports fan. Last year of officiating, how long have you been doing it?
Well, this will be my 29th year of football. I think this is my 36th year overall. And I did 28 years of basketball and got out of that 5 or 6 years ago. The numbers all start to blur together.
Sure.
I did baseball for 5 years, and that was pretty boring. not enough action. Yeah. It's interesting. I was at in my real life, I'm an IT director, and I was at a thing at Ohio State yesterday, and they had the CIO from the San Francisco Giants there. That they basically, and of course we're here with a bunch of techies in this room.
Right. Yep.
They are shooting all the activity on the field at 20 frames per second, and they could tell me from the time the catcher caught it to the time it left his hand to the time it got to second base, and how fast Matsui was running between first and second base. All these data points that they're collecting all the time in the ballpark. I just thought it was interesting.
That is.
Being a base. Now, that would make baseball exciting. When I was umpiring, we had a pitcher out there that couldn't find the plate. It didn't seem to move quite that quickly and didn't seem to be quite that neat. But anyway.
So this will be your last year for football?
Yep.
And then just not going to do anything? Just take it easy?
Well, no. I'm going to stay involved in officiating. I just want to be on the field anymore. For example, in basketball, I do observing for the Central District Tournament and also the regional tournament. So I will go wherever they tell me to go, observe the officials, provide them feedback afterwards, and then that's part of the rating process used to bring them in at the district, and it even has a little influence in future years at the regional state opportunity. So that's kind of cool. And then in football, I'd like to assign for maybe some of the leagues I worked, whether it be the OCC or the Mid-State or something like that at some point in time. But I've already talked to the current assigner, and I'm certainly not there to push him out, but I've offered up the opportunity to do some observing since Lancaster's in the league, and they need someone every 5 times a year to keep an eye on those guys. So I'll stay involved. It's just it's time to get off the field.
Do you remember the first call you made and the reaction? I guess the first call where somebody just laid you out and you're thinking, they're 500 feet away. I mean,
I don't remember. I will tell you. I mean, I don't remember any call. I mean, I know that in basketball it's a lot easier to recall because everyone's packed in the gym. But officiating for me was that diversion from life or diversion from work. So it didn't bother me that people booed, but I will tell you a story. It's the Jim Jackson days when he played for Toledo Mid-Cumber, and they were at Newark playing. And Lenny Conrad, you know Lenny very well. Lenny and I were partners for 20 years, and Lenny, it was one of those long rebounds, and the kid from Newark behind the Jim Jackson actually goes up and grabs the rebound. He gets it clean. Well, of course, Jackson jumps into the guy from Newark, but so it looks like the guy from Newark is essentially, as they like to call it, over the back of Jim Jackson. So Lenny calls a foul on the Newark kid at Newark. And I've never heard 2,500 people boo so loud for so long in my life. That's probably from a call perspective, that is probably one thing that I remember more than anything. And then the other thing I remember is, we like to play tricks on each other. We were doing the Licking County League Championship just by chance. It was Newark Catholic in Granville. And this is the day when the whistle actually had a P in it. And if you actually had enough time, and you had the right tweezers and little scissors on it, you could pull that P out of the whistle. And when you blew those whistles that didn't have a P in, they sounded horrible. So here's Lenny getting ready to throw the ball up, and he hits that whistle hard, and it gives the worst sounding thing. And he looks at that thing, and he shakes it, and he blows it again. And I'm now crumpled over laughing, and I've told the people at the table what's about to happen, and they're laughing, and he looks at me, and he's just shooting daggers at me. To which I pull a new whistle out of my pocket, and I fling it over to him, and we go on with the game. So it's kind of the hijinks that went along with that.
Sure.
I won't miss the games. I'll miss the players in the games. I'll miss the coaches in the games. I'll miss the people that I officiated with, whether it be my crew or the crews I got to work with in the tournament. That's what I'll miss.
Long time. We NBA playoffs going on. You got a champion out of the whole group?
Honestly,
don't care?
NBA, I mean, it goes too long.
Yeah.
They don't try till they get to the playoffs. I don't have the time to watch that. Besides that, there's baseball games on, and yes, they're boring at the major league level, but as long as they're giving me the data on whether the ball was in the strike zone or outside the strike zone, and this guy's, he's batting against left-handed guys who wear their hat at an angle with shades on their hat and this, that, and the other. As long as there's statistics, I'll stay engaged.
Well, Tom, we appreciate you coming in and giving us an update on the street levy and Midhoff building and all the election races and all that stuff. And what's on the agenda for going back to Utah? Line?
No. Actually, Susan and I are getting away for a little trip to Las Vegas.
There you go.
We go out there and enjoy.
There are no little trips to Las Vegas.
You don't have to gamble when you go out there. There's some shows she wants to see. There's some things we want to do out there. It's a great city, and you don't have to spend the first nickel gambling, which is a good thing because I'm not very good at that either.
Taking the golf clubs?
No. Okay. I'm no good. I quit playing that a couple years ago, too.
We'll play for money sometime. Again, thanks, Tom. We appreciate you coming in.
All right.
Thanks for tuning in to this edition of Lancaster Perspective. I'm Mike Miller, and remember, until we meet again, let's make a difference.
It's Timothy Green's first day at school.
What's in there? He's about to fall over.
Anything he might need. There's a box of tissues on the bottom and some Band-Aids. There's a whole first aid kit, actually.
Mom, I can handle it from here.
You don't have to be perfect
Have a great day.
That's too much pressure.
Have the day you have.
to be a perfect parent.
There are 2 people in the world who want you more than anything. They'll make some mistakes, but they will love you more than you can ever imagine.
There are thousands of children in foster care who will take you just as you are.